Joining us now is former U.S. Ambassador to China and former Commerce Secretary under President Obama, Gary Locke. Ambassador, President Trump spoke about his phone call briefly with President Xi yesterday. Just take a listen to what he said.
Yeah, we have the deal. I mean, we've had a deal. We announced the deal, and we'll be, I guess you could say, I wouldn't even say finalizing it up, Scott. I would say we have a deal, and we're going to just make sure that everybody understands what the deal is.
Sounds a little nonchalant. What do you make of the tone there? Do you believe the White House is taking this seriously?
Well, obviously, they're taking the conversation with President Xi Jinping very seriously, and we've got to get the trade talks back on track. Both sides are really reeling from not so much the tariffs, but all the countermeasures that have been aimed at each other. And American factories are in danger of shutting down because they don't have access to these rare earths, especially these rare earth magnets that are predominantly made and supplied by China. And these are magnets that are used in the steering systems, the brake systems, the engine systems of our automobiles, but also semiconductors, manufacturing robotics, and even our jet airplanes, military airplanes, and ballistic missiles. So we've got to figure this out. We've got to get this thing resolved as quickly as possible.
The president kept saying that there's a deal. In fact, I counted it 4 times. He used that word deal in that very brief clip that we just showed. But is there actually a deal based on what we know?
No, there's no deal because President Xi Jinping is not going to engage in deal making. He'll perhaps say, yes, we'll address some of these issues. We will look at the applications for exports of these rare earth minerals to the United States. But China has imposed and set up a licensing system the same way that America has set up a licensing system on the export of what we consider key technologies around the world, and especially to China. China now is doing the same thing, saying that these rare earth minerals could be used for military purposes. In fact, they are used in our fighter jets and in our ballistic missiles. So China is saying, well, we've got to be sure how these rare earth minerals are going to be used. So he's going to say to the negotiators, you go figure this out, but make sure that China gets a fair deal. So I don't believe that there is a deal made just between the two presidents.
Let's just say Trump's able to secure deals with every country in the world down the road here. Has the damage already been done for both big and small businesses? For example, a small business owner in Iowa.
Well, it's awfully late, for instance, for many businesses to get the supplies that they need and the products they need for even the Christmas season. It's going to take a long time for those manufacturing facilities in China to ramp up. And of course, the shipping rates now have gone through the roof. Everybody will be trying to get their product into the United States, and that's going to create a lot of demand for ships, and they'll be able to charge a lot more. So prices are going up no matter what.
New tariffs on steel and aluminium imports to the US kicked in a few hours ago, now doubling to 50%. The struggling US steel industry is applauding this latest broadside from the Trump administration. But other sectors that rely on the metals are warning of price hikes everywhere, from car lots to grocery store shelves, although it's not entirely clear how or when the costs will be passed on to consumers. Meanwhile, the Trump team has asked all countries that trade with the US to submit trade proposals by the end of today. The White House called the letter that went out a friendly reminder that the deadline is coming up. Meanwhile, trade tensions between the US and China are still flaring as Chinese state media is taking some new swipes at President Trump with the help of AI. CNN's Will Ripley explains.
This AI-generated anime is going viral in China, portraying U.S. President Donald Trump as a tariff-wielding superhero. It's one of several recent videos mocking Trump's trade war policies, many of them created with AI.
Your taxi truck, your taxi chair, red was burning in your dumpster fire.
China's English-language broadcaster produced this video, blaming Trump's tariffs for U.S. inflation and global instability. The video echoes Beijing's official stance. Since the U.S. imposition of the unilateral tariff measures, it has not resolved any of its own issues, she says, and has instead severely undermined the international economic and trade order. China's Xinhua news agency produced this AI animation, featuring a robot named Tariff, programmed to impose trade restrictions.
I now choose death to end the harm.
Please, don't do this.
Goodbye, Dr. Mallory.
The robot self-destructs rather than obey orders to raise tariffs. AI-generated clips like these, showing Trump and Elon Musk hard at work in factories, have been flooding China's tightly controlled social media platforms for months, all untouched by Beijing's army of online censors. Designed to push China's narrative, the U.S. is making a fool of itself, and more importantly, losing ground to China in the global trade war President Trump started. China's foreign trade has been able to withstand the difficulties, he says, maintaining steady growth and showing strong resilience to maintain competitiveness on the international front. China's Bureau of Statistics put out numbers claiming exports are actually rising despite the trade war, partially due to a surge in orders before the tariffs kicked in. Outside observers often question the accuracy of China's numbers, which are impossible to independently verify. At this Chinese textile plant, the director says the U.S. no longer dominates their strategy. The trade war made me realize the U.S. is just a small part of the global market, he says. We'd rather bring Chinese products to the rest of the world, reasonably priced, high quality, and let more people benefit. China's top diplomat is also firing back, Wang Yi reportedly telling new U.S. Ambassador David Perdue the U.S.-China relationship's at a critical juncture. The Chinese readout of the meeting also says David Perdue stated that President Trump greatly respects President Xi Jinping. Far from tough talk, China claims, ahead of that likely crucial call between Trump and Xi. They sure do have a lot to talk about. The 90-day trade truce they brokered in Geneva is unraveling right now. At stake, rare earth minerals, vital for U.S. tech and defense, which China is still restricting. Washington's latest retaliatory moves include tech sanctions and student visa bans. Both sides are now accusing the other of undermining the agreement, which is putting global markets and supply chains on edge. Will Ripley, CNN, Taipei.
New U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum imports are now in effect. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Tuesday doubling the tariffs from 25% to 50%. Critics warn this could lead to higher prices on everything from cars and appliances to electrical equipment and even groceries. But the U.S. president insists the action will boost manufacturing jobs. Meanwhile, the U.S. Trade Representative has told all countries that trade with the United States to submit their best trade proposals by Wednesday.
USTR sent this letter to all of our trading partners just to give them a friendly reminder that the deadline is coming up. And they are in talks. Ambassador Greer, Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick are in talks with many of our key trading partners around the globe. As you know, Brian, I know the Wall Street Journal has covered this quite heavily. And they continue to be engaged in those discussions. And this letter was simply to remind these countries that the deadline is approaching and the president expects good deals. And we are on track for that, I will emphasize.
To New York now, and Rana Faruha, CNN global economic analyst. She's also a global business columnist and associate editor with the Financial Times. Good to have you with us.
Great to be here.
So ahead of a much-anticipated phone call between President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, China is mocking Trump, saying he's losing his own trade war with Beijing and portraying the U.S. as increasingly isolated economically after Trump previously criticized China. So where do you see this going, and how might this back and forth impact the outcome of that critical phone call?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you know, there are the facts on the ground about trade, and then there are the psychologies of the leaders of the U.S. and China. And, you know, I would say that in some ways, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping have a few things in common. They're both quite nationalistic. They tend to like things to go their way. You know, these are two powerful leaders that are squaring off, and neither of them can really afford politically to be seen as being weak. You know, weakness and the perception of political loss is something that's completely unacceptable to Trump. We've seen that again and again. And China is at a moment where it really can't afford to be seen to be kowtowing to Donald Trump. So I think Xi Jinping is in a position where even if he wasn't naturally inclined to play it tough, I think politically it's, difficult at this moment for China to back down in the face of Trump's tariffs war.
And just weeks away from the deadline for the 90-day pause on tariffs, the White House says that President Trump has sent out letters to major U.S. trading partners demanding their best offers by the end of today, Wednesday, calling this a friendly reminder in an apparent effort to get deals done before that July 8th deadline. What's your response to this method of making trade deals?
Well, I think Trump's strategy has always been to divide and conquer. He looks for who's weak in any given trading bloc, tries to sort of pull weaker nations apart from their natural blocks. I mean, in some ways, you could look at the trade deal that's been cut with the UK and say, well, shouldn't the UK's natural alliance be with Europe post-Brexit? Of course, that's not the case. But I think one of the things that Trump likes to do is to really kind of separate nations out and really try and make them negotiate on their own. I've been a little bit surprised, frankly, that we haven't seen more open alliance making between countries outside the U.S. I'm surprised we haven't seen China and the European Union, for example, coming out with some, shared talking points or shared approaches to Trump. That, to me, would be the way to deal with the U.S. president, but we haven't seen it yet.
And Donald Trump posted on Truth Social Tuesday that, quote, because of tariffs, our economy is booming. As an economist yourself, what do you say to that, particularly after the OECD just slashed its U.S. growth forecast, bringing global expectations down with it?
Yeah, it's really kind of tragic, Rosemary, because, the U.S. had the strongest recovery in the post-COVID world.
What we see here is Trump losing on the trade deals. And I think what we're really trying to see is Trump scramble. Because again, remember, I got to keep hammering this home. The original narrative from Trump going to the election and, the interim period, the transition period from the election day to inauguration, from him, from Lutnick, from everybody was like, we're not actually looking to make deals. We're actually looking to effectively destroy the trading network of the world, right? And build things in America. And basically anything we can't import, we're going to tariff to the max and build here. That was the narrative. Now, whether or not you thought that was good or bad, or you thought that was a genuine thing, that's what they said. And then quickly it became, when the tariffs started failing and the backlash happened and the stock market crashed and Republicans were hearing from their donors too and their supporters that this wasn't working, then it became quickly, well, actually, this is a temporary thing. We're doing it to get China to bend the knee and make a deal, and Canada and all the other countries too. And that's not happening. It's not happening. So Donald was like, we're doing this to not get a deal, and now we are wanting to get a deal, but there's no deal. The thing, though, is there were deals. There were global deals. The United States, one positive you could say about the U.S. is that they do a lot of trade with a lot of countries, or at least they did. So Trump lost all these trade deals, and now those countries, they're willing to wait out Taco Trump.